Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my latest and greatest review of The Walking Dead. At least I hope it will be my greatest. I'll try to make it something slightly worth your while. So, spoiler alert before we go forward, as I will be bearing all in this review. And without further ado, let's dive into the shenanigans of tonight. And the shenanigans that we witnessed in this episode were certainly of a different caliber and nature of the previous episodes that we have witnessed so far, and the stress that they have completely inundated us with. There was a definite change in dynamic between this week and the last, and I think that it was a necessary change of pace, at least for people like me who are seriously considering going on heart medication from just the sheer level of turmoil in my physical inability to digest that. Or maybe I need like Pepcid or something. If it's a digestion problem, I don't know. I was about to medicate myself in every possible way. And so this episode, you know, of course, it offered its own stresses and, you know, intrigue and things of that nature. And it may have felt, you know, a little bit slower at times, but I think that the more deliberate pace and like the tight focus on characters and kind of, you know, the central mission of going out and getting the medical supplies and the, you know, the issue between, well, Rick and Carol and her ultimate, you know, exile from the group. I mean, I think that this focus, was good, and I feel like this was something that needed to happen and needed to be done in the story and gave us a chance to really look into, you know, more of the motives of other characters and kind of the future of the group as things currently stand, you know? So, first and foremost, I mean, how do you guys feel about the whole Carol thing? I mean, as strange and discomforting as it is, you know, to see this member of the group who has been there since like day one, as bizarre as it is to see her go, in a lot of ways she has changed, and I feel that the last couple episodes are really trying to set that up. I mean, this is how this show works, and it is just positively evil in my book. But the more that a show like this focuses on a certain character, the more likely it is that they're gonna be gonzos before you know it, okay? So it's basically like, oh hey, you know, this episode had more of my favorite characters, oh, like, oh, I'm so excited, oh, and then it hits ya that they're probably going to be ripped away from your loving grasp in just a matter of time. I mean, that's kind of how I feel about this show. I have trust issues with the shows that I watch, okay? But, yeah, I mean, there was a lot of focus on her in the last few episodes, and I mean, particularly with the decision she made, controversial as it was, and there was this, you know, the very awkward tension between her and Rick running throughout the episode, and how we kind of switched back and forth between the prison group going and doing what they needed to do and kind of, you know, seeing these sort of case studies of all the different characters we've got. I mean, everyone from Tyreese to Michonne to Bob to Daryl, everyone who was featured in this episode kind of had a moment, and then which was contrasted with the central issue between Rick and Carol, and ultimately between Carol and the rest of the group, and, you know, what the group values and everything, and seeing just the sheer like titanic rage of Tyreese, and, you know, that pitted against the cool survivalism of Carol. I mean, I don't think that she would have been able to make it much longer in the group, and I'd kind of thought to myself, you know, I don't think Tyreese would even hesitate to take out someone like her. Not at this point in time in his life, you know. I mean, Michonne kind of hit the nail on the head when he was like whacking away at the bushes and just kind of let that walker drop down on him like he was ready for whatever was gonna come, and we sort of know what's gonna come, judging by the appetite of the undead. And, you know, how she was like, you know, so is that your plan? Do you even have a plan? I mean, it's just the sheer fact that he is just emoting in constant. He is just this freaking locomotive charging forward. I mean, just like steam pouring out of his ears. Like, you can just see that just by the energy that he emits, okay? And so all that to say, I don't think that Carol would be particularly exempt from the rage that he has, you know, exuded so far, and because of what transpired. He's far from over that, that's for sure. And so I think, in a sense, that it was almost kind of a merciful act on Rick's part, because it's like, you know, it's either you get to face this isolation, you get to come to terms with the fact that you've grown to the point that you don't need just anyone. You know, it's like he's giving her the chance to capitalize on this newfound strength of hers, or to face what's gonna be some not so danceable music, okay? You know, or at least the dance is not going to go in her favor. So there's just, it's a really, I think this episode was very complex and kind of psychological in a lot of ways, you know? Like, there were little bits of action interspersed throughout, but there was nothing that particularly, you know, left me, like, panting, just on my knees, trembling from the craziness. It was more kind of, I was really able to take this in stride, partly because I was really trying to figure out, you know, just what the meat of the matter was. And we had that, you know, that tension between Rick and Carol, which was just so pervasive, and I knew that it was going to result in something significant, and that it did, you know. It's a strange feeling, but the reason why I feel really uncomfortable about her leaving the group, I mean, despite the decision that she made and everything, is it comes down to one person. It comes down to Daryl. That is immediately who I thought of when I, you know, when I saw Carol go up to the passenger door and she pulls on it and just, you know, it's locked out. And she knows that that is pretty much, that's the beginning of her fate. And that this is the end. And I just immediately thought of Daryl, especially, you know, in that last, you know, kind of emotional scenes that were sort of parallel the scene of Carol driving away, of Rick driving off into, you know, back to the prison, of the other group heading back to the prison, and all of them being on such different places about the group, about life in general. It kind of made me think of this sort of bitter, like, reverse dystopian, like the intro sequence from that 70s show where they're all rocking out in the car together, hanging out down the street, you know. It's sort of like if you took all those characters and put them all in their own cars, and they're all just, that's funny. You have to admit, that was a good metaphor. I've done my duty for the day. I'm proud of myself for that, if nothing else. That's kind of what it made me think of in sort of a sick way. But yeah, I mean, I'm really concerned for Daryl, because I don't think he's gonna take the news of her disappearance sitting down. I mean, of course, in a time like this, it's easy to just say, like, oh, hey, you know, they got a little bit nom-nommed along the way, and here am I, you know, the survivor of this account. And so, you know, it'd be easy for Rick to kind of play it off that way, just as Carol was originally intending to play everything off like she didn't stab and murder and kill and burn these people. I don't know why I just used so many death words there, but I think it drives the point home, you know. But knowing Daryl, there's just such this, like, an instinctual nature about him. He really feels things out. I mean, he is in touch with the world. I think that he's in touch with people's personas. I mean, he didn't exactly know that Bob the Boozer was making off with the drankety drank until that last critical moment, but at the same time, you know, we know Daryl, and just the sheer amount of emotional energy that he invested in Carol, especially in in the second season, all the time that he spent, you know, blood, sweat, and tears going after Sophia for her, and the way that they kind of held each other together when everything in the world, you know, had it out for everyone. They were this unit, and their bond, I think, was a truly deep one that's been meaningful to both of them. And we saw that emerge a lot in the third season too. And I mean, even with kind of the reemergence of Daryl's brother, but at the same time, that bond was still there. We saw it in the first episode of this season. It has been something that's been so constant and been so enriching to both of them that, you know, I just. And we know just how strong Carol is now, being that, like, at the very beginning of the season, she's teaching the little kids how to use knives, how to kill. We see her, like, at the beginning of this episode when she tells Lindsay, like, don't call me mom. And just no sympathy, no, oh, it's okay, it's an accident, it's fine, it happens, I understand. I'm probably a kind of maternal figure. She's shut down. She's trying to protect this community of which, you know, she just really is not part anymore. But, you know, so it's like we see that so much about her has changed, but you know, I just have a really bad feeling about how Daryl's going to take the news of this. He's lost so many people dear to him and has endured these failings, and I have a feeling that, you know, if Rick says something, that he's not going to take it at face value. I have a feeling. I mean, what do you guys think? I think that's going to be the big implication, as Daryl is a hugely critical piece of the group. And if Daryl ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Okay, well, at least for me. At least for us. I think that's kind of the general gist of our relationship to Mr. Dixon. So yeah, but at the same time, you know, I think that last talk that Carol and Rick had was really fascinating, and there were a lot of ties in the episode made to things that happened, you know, once upon a time that could have easily never been brought up again in the show. You know, like when Carol's trying to defend herself, and they're sort of playing this strategic game with one another. You know, they're watching each other, they're constantly assessing one another's moves, in the way that Carol is trying to get Rick to accept what she's done, in the same way that Rick had to accept what he did to Shane and everything. And what was also interesting was, you know, the guy and the girl that they encountered in their raid in the house, and you know, like, they were kind of almost like, they were sort of a parallel, you know, couple to the two who originally had the sickness at the prison, that, you know, and sort of this whole, like, taking responsibility for lives, and, like, you know, there's a lot of mirroring in this episode, which I think was interesting and made it really fascinating and tragic watch for me. And then going to the other group, the prison raid group, of course we knew that Bob the Boozer, some issue regarding the moonshine was going to come back up, especially as we saw, like, in the little preview for the episode, we saw, you know, we got to relive that delightful seeing the little domino effect of his slamming down of the drink on just truly unfortunate in the extreme. And yeah, I mean, I've just had that weird feeling about him, and he's not, you know, he's not a truly despicable character, and he kind of talks about, you know, the silences, and we sort of have this, you know, this darker past that's hinted at and kind of comes into fruition when, whoops, his bag is exposed and certain illicit materials are within, as opposed to the stuff that could potentially, you know, save everybody in the freaking community, you know. And I like that Daryl got really indignant, because in that moment we were all just like, oh, hell no. And so Daryl just kind of stood up on our behalf and was just like, bitch. I mean, that was kind of like a Jesse Pinkman moment, like, getting up in his face, and, you know, he had this feeling that he was gonna get, like, pushed off the edge. Sort of like that scene in The Lion King where, you know, well, I guess, oh, there's a scene where Scar is holding, you know, Mufasa over the edge of the cliff, and nobody likes to think about that. I was thinking more about the end where it's like Simba and Scar and the cliff and the fire. You know what I'm talking about? I don't know. I'm trying, guys. I really am. My brain is a wonderland, I promise you. But yeah, so I think that yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how, you know, if he can really survive with the group. He's gonna get back in touch with the Governator later down the line. I mean, things are open to interpretation and movement, and there's just really no way of knowing what exactly is going on with this guy. Other than that, he's ready to get crunk, and now is not exactly the time for said behavior. And then, of course, you know, we have Michonne and Tyreese. You know, they have their little discussion where the governor, again, is hinted at as Michonne kind of calls Tyreese out on his anger, and he sort of calls her out on hers, or whatever is left of it. And, you know, I think that her silence on the matter truly speaks volumes. She says that she's not angry anymore. But what is she now if she's still, you know, trying to keep tabs on this guy exactly? And she says more like, you know, if he was here now, I would do what needs to be done. But I think there's a certain momentum for her to arrange for the situation to occur. You know, I don't think that she's not exactly the kind of girl who's gonna wait for something to fall in her lap and just say, thank you, okay, I guess I'll take care of business. You know, she's the type who will arrange said business in her way. That's what I see. And that is inevitably, you know, going to bring the governor back into play if he's not already somehow in the woodwork of the crisis that's happening at the prison. And there's, yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of fascinating stuff going on. I like the focus on the characters, you know, just the essential core group, and getting out of the hothouse environment of the prison where everyone has fallen ill, and there's just this sense of, like, there's just this stifling helplessness that I experience as a viewer when I'm caught seeing so many characters that I know so well stuck in this crisis. And I mean, you know, I'm glad that this episode's scope extended beyond that, because we have to ask ourselves the question of, you know, like, who is meant to endure in this group? Like, what kind of role is Rick going to take on? Like, are people going to be able to work this out, or is everyone kind of splintering off in light of this crisis and people's, you know, I mean, as if everyone's true natures weren't already exposed by what's been happening. But I just think that it allows for a lot of interesting, you know, character development directions. And I don't think that Carol's involvement in everything is over, primarily because of Daryl. And I mean, also, like, Lindsay and her sister as well. I mean, they might be troubled, but it's hard to say just how much of a sway they will have in bringing Carol back into things. And yeah, there's just a lot of, I liked the conversations that were had, like the dialogue about, you know, Lori and the freaking pancakes, and it made me think, you know, Lori would not really stand a chance serving breakfast to Walter Jr. Okay, that's just a thought that I had. And yes, I mean, there was a lot of these, you know, just little meaningful moments, and we need that in the midst of a lot of craziness. And I thought I liked the cinematography as well, and just the way that the environment was taken in. Like, you know, the shot that was focusing on the, you know, dead zombie on the floor. Bob just stuck the men's, like, bathroom key in his head, and I thought that was kind of funny. And then, you know, we saw, like, it was like that supermarket sign where, you know, the numbers and everything are all twisted around, and it was like, it spelled out hell. And I just love all those different aspects of the, you know, the apocalyptic landscape. And I think that it's really cool that, you know, the set designers in The Walking Dead take advantage of the opportunity to play with the world that we have around us, and, you know, think, how would people express themselves? Like, via graffiti and via just, I mean, all the commonplace things that we see today. What form would those things take at the end of the world. They're still there. I mean, everything hasn't been like incinerated, so there's still the semblance of the former life, but everything's just twisted, and I like it. I like it. It was a solid episode to me. I feel uneasy and queasy and not exactly breezy. And that's just about how that cookie crumbles for me. So thank you guys so much for watching, and take care. See y'all next week. I'm hoping to maybe do some more music or something in the future. This semester I'm working double jobs. I'm in school, so I do what I can for you guys, and thank you so much for staying tuned, being around, and as lovely as you always are. Feel free to let me know other thoughts, your anticipations for next week. There are certain characters, you know, that we didn't really get to see this time around, but again, it was because of that narrow focus that we really had to have, and I really liked it. I just feel kind of sick to my stomach for Daryl and for people, life in general. It's, yeah, I dare say that the shit is going to shit is going to hit the fan. If I can, in fact, actually speak. So, yeah, I think that we're going back to the Bedlam and Ballyhoo again next week. So, brace yourselves, you know, get your diapers or your Depends if you want to feel a little bit more, you know, of age. Do what you gotta do. I know I will be. So, I love you guys, and I'll be back before you know it.
Last night I felt